Success in one's chosen career is glamorous and attractive. No wonder they say success has many relatives, but failure is an orphan. Many people celebrate success, but few know the story behind the success. On Spotlight, we celebrate the story behind the success. We profile personalities who have recorded success in their chosen career with emphasis on the work they had to put in to achieve success. People who faced challenges and conquered them. Giving up was never an option. They made it to the top by dint of hard work and determination. If they could make it, you too can. This is Spotlight. If you have an inspiring story to tell or you wish to sponsor Spotlight, you can call us on 0703 759 9666 or 0701 212 7777 or send us an email to spotlightprogram1@gmail.com and we'll be glad to talk to you. Spotlight, telling the story behind the success, inspiring a generation.
Hello and welcome to the maiden edition of Spotlight. Spotlight is a program that focuses on personalities who, by dint of hard work, achieve success in their chosen career. People who didn't give up despite daunting challenges they had to face on their way to the top. They persevered and conquered. We bring you the stories behind their success. On the maiden edition of Spotlight is a man who, from a very humble beginning, rose to prominence and fame by dint of hard work and perseverance. He is an Olympic gold medalist, a wrestler of note, recognized internationally, the current president of the Nigerian Wrestling Federation, and recently elected into the United World Wrestling Bureau. He is the first black man to be elected into that body. Two-time member of the Bayelsa State House of Assembly and currently the Commissioner for Sport in Bayelsa State. He is a honorable and also an academic doctor, but his title will not be complete without adding champion to it. He is Honorable Dr. Champion Daniel Igali. Honorable, it's a pleasure to have you on Spotlight.
It's actually a big thrill for me to be with you today.
I would like us to take us through some of your achievements, which of course we didn't capture. I'm convinced that we didn't capture some of the achievements. So let's take us through this.
I am currently the president of the Nigerian Wrestling Federation. I am a member of the World Wrestling Bureau and Commissioner for Youth and Sports. I think that's about the most current description you can have of me.
Okay, now ordinarily hearing the name Daniel Igali, champion, Honorable Daniel Igali, a lot of persons will probably sit back and say it came on a plateau. And it really come on a plateau. And it's low. Can you take us through your story from where you started and how you got to that?
Would have come on a platter of gold if I wasn't into sports. Maybe I was born into aristocracy and somehow I inherited a kinship or something of that nature because of my lineage. But luckily, my notoriety is from sports. And in sports, you have to either do it by dint of hard work or by your God-given skills, or you were born into a society where everything was almost ready-made for you and you kind of used it to get to where you were. For me, both scenarios were not there for me. I grew up in a village, at the time small, but now for a village, a pretty medium-sized village in Nawara in Southern Region local government area. Of course, like every other village, is where Sewage goes on the streets. You do your urination and defecation on the same river. You bathe there. You drink that same water. That kind of circumstances. That's how I grew up. And I developed a love for wrestling from a very young age. Maybe as early as 10, 11. I think my first memories were when, at the time, the Commissioner for Education came to the village to personally see if the village could be given a secondary school. And I was selected to wrestle to entertain him. That means that there was something about you that the villagers saw. At the age of 16, I was discovered by the then Yenagoa local government area in Rivers State. Nicholas Egbete, a coach from the Yenagoa local government at the time, discovered me, and I wrestled in a competition in Yenagoa, and then we were taken to Port Harcourt for the finals. This was, I think, in 1988, 87 or 88, I'm not sure exactly when. I was just about writing my WAEC then. And I made the team, I made a cut there, and I was taken to Port Harcourt to the Sports Council, training under Jackson B there. I remember the first trials we had, I think it was in 89, I was supposed to make the team, the River State team, but I wasn't good enough. And that is being honest. I didn't make the team because there was someone better than me. Okoro Egbe was his name. He's now the staff of the Bayelsa State Sports Council. So Jackson felt there was something unique about me, and he wanted me to go understudy the others at the national tournament in Benue State. And I traveled with them to Benue. And somehow, instead of understudying and just watching what happens at the national level, they wanted me to actually have a feel for the tournament. So I was given out to Borno State to compete for them. And I think the agreement was that if I got to a situation where I had to wrestle with River State, then I would give it up. So I wrestled for Borno State, got to the quarterfinals against River State. And I had to now give it up. I was told not to even come out for the quarterfinals. And so I was walked over. But as God would have it, somehow Okoro Egbe now went on to wrestle in the semifinals and drew against somebody. And at the time, if there was a 0-0 match, both of you kind of lost your chance. So I now had to come back up, and I won the national championships. That was how I really started in wrestling. And the Plateau State coach was there, saw me, and wanted me to come over to Plateau State. So he came to the village, met with my parents. Of course, my dad was an accountant, my mom was an headmistress of a school, and they both insisted on education. So they signed, I don't know what contract they signed, but I think they were able to get him to agree that for me to go and compete for Plateau State, I would have to further my education, which was one of the things my parents wanted us to do. At the time, I'd written JAMB, I think. And so I went to Plateau State, and as God would have it, became a three-time national champion, a two-time African champion in Plateau State. And in 1994, I had the opportunity to represent Nigeria at the Commonwealth Games. And as I would say, that's history, because when I went to Canada, I wanted to stay back. The reason I wanted to stay back is because from 1992 to 93, I was in the University of Jos studying English as a major. I was about getting into my third year, but I was already carrying over 10 courses because I was always competing for Nigeria when we were writing exams. And when I had the opportunity to go to Canada and interacting with other students in Canada and knowing the educational system, knowing that I would have an opportunity to both combine education and sports, I decided it was a no-brainer that I had to stay back. Stayed back. In 5 years, I became their first ever world champion in 1999. The first world champion for Canada in wrestling. In 2000, I became their first ever Olympic gold medalists. And as I would say, that is how God set the path for me. And today, I am the Commissioner for Youth and Sports in Bayelsa State, President of the Nigeria Wrestling Federation, and a two-time member of the Bayelsa State House of Assembly.
But when your story about moving to Canada, representing Canada, is one that God is making. But can you take us through that transition? How easy was it from Nigeria to Canada? Yes, we know you moved at some point from Nigeria to Canada. But is that easy? What was the transition to move to Canada, represent Canada?
It wasn't easy, because we competed at the Commonwealth Games and I wasn't really one of the top athletes at the Commonwealth Games. So we were 13 in my weight class. I came 11th. I was 11th. And one of the reasons was because I was also injured. I had a back injury. So I wasn't like a top athlete, but the coaches who saw me wrestle knew that there was a lot of talent and potential. And the decision to even stay back in Canada was a very tough one. You don't just stay back in another country. There are a lot of things you have to go through in the immigration processes. So that alone took over almost 2 years. From 1994 August till August 1996. 1996 is when I became a landed immigrant, and that's when I could actually practice. So from 94 to 96, I had to do a lot of odd jobs just to ensure that I survived. I couldn't really go to school because I wanted to go to school from 94 to almost the end of 95 is when I was able to enroll into a university college, Burnaby Mountain Wrestling. Douglas College is when I enrolled to. I was there for 2 years and then I now transferred in 1997 to Simon Fraser University to study criminology. Then I got an athletic scholarship to study criminology at Simon Fraser University in wrestling. Today, my record at the university is unblemished. It's the first time they had a perfect record in the University of Simon Fraser. I had 116 matches and won all of them. So I am 116 and 0. I competed at what they call the NAIs, the National Association of International Athletics, Intercollegiate Athletics. And all 3 years I became a national champion, and all 3 years I was the athlete of the tournament, the athlete of the year. And from the time I competed till now, I'm the only NAI athlete who went on to become an Olympic champion. So to get straight to your point or to your question, it wasn't easy. It was difficult. One of the reasons I also stayed back in Canada was because I admired the wrestlers. At the Commonwealth Games, we had 10 weight classes. Then we didn't have female wrestling. We had 10 weight classes. Out of the 10, Canada won 9 gold medals. Nigeria won 1, but it was because the Canadian athlete was injured. He couldn't continue. So I wanted to be like them. I wanted to wrestle like the Canadian athletes. I felt if I could wrestle anywhere close to where they were, their standards, that I would have arrived. In 1998, I became a Canadian citizen. And so I was now eligible to represent Canada. But I must, for the records, make it very clear that I made attempts, even in 1996 when I became a landed immigrant and could travel back to Nigeria to represent Nigeria. I made a lot of attempts to come and do trials to make the Olympic team in 1996. But I was rebuffed. It was almost 2 months after the Olympics that I got a letter saying that I was invited for the trials. It was belated. In 1997, they had the World Championships in Atlanta. And my school league was even prepared to sponsor me to go. So I wrote to Nigeria because they were not going to that tournament. I wanted to represent them. They still didn't. So in 1998, when I had that opportunity, I didn't want to toy with it because Nigeria wasn't at the time very serious. So I say this because a lot of times people think I deliberately abandoned Nigeria. I didn't. I wanted to do the best I could, but Nigeria didn't give me those opportunities. And when I saw that Canada was willing to give me the opportunity to compete for them, I took it with two hands, and I don't have any regrets doing it. So in 1998, when I became a Canadian citizen, one of the first things I wanted to do was to know how many world champions they had, because that would give me a good idea of how to prepare for world championships. I'd never been, even while I competed for Nigeria, I never went to any world championships. So I wanted to get advice from veterans in the sport. And when I got to one or two world medalists, people who won bronze or silver, it was then I knew that Canada never had a world champion. In 1998, I went to the World Championships and I came fourth for the first time. My first ever World Championships, I was fourth. And in Canada, when you are top 8, you are ranked as an A athlete. So you almost have no limits of support from the federal government. And that was how I started getting support from the government. And I was an A cadet athlete, so I was getting money monthly. I was able to start training very well because you had the opportunity. In fact, you could have access to a physician, to therapists, physiotherapists, to any kind of sporting support you needed as an A cadet athlete you could get. And that was where I started blossoming. And by 1999, went to the World Championships and became their first ever world champion in freestyle wrestling. And in 2000, became their first ever Olympic champion. But I must tell you, for you to get to that, it's not only about talent, it's about hard work. I remember days where you finished training. In fact, there was a particular day I remember very vividly where I drove for over 1 hour after a very heavy training session and forgot where my house was. Because you were so disoriented. That was one of the loading days. Loading days are where you are put in the center of the mat and 6 people come at you 1 minute each and they go full throttle on. And after 4 minutes, you are completely decimated. You don't know where you are. And that's where the coach wants you to be, where you can't recognize yourself. And those are the things that take you into battles. And I remember, even at the Olympics, when I got to one of those heights where you were completely famished, it's those moments you remember, when you are put in the center of the mat and 6 people are coming in on you every minute. So if I want to tell you, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of perseverance, a lot of discipline. Many days where you are even injured and you can't go to the mats. You have to go through the rigors of recuperation, the rigors of trying to get yourself fit. Sometimes when you are injured, it's even tougher than when you are not injured and you are training regularly, because trying to get back to being fit for competition is worse than being fit and trying to get ready for competition. So it was a tough one, not knowing where to stay sometimes, not having money for rent. A lot of times people will tell you, oh, go abroad is easy. It's not easy. It's a lot of work. And I know what I went through to get to the height of wrestling in Canada, where I became the first world and Olympic champion.
You see, some persons just feel, okay, the stories that I said before, that is well documented in Daniel Igali left Nigeria to Canada, became the world champion. So, some persons definitely thought it was just a really big person. And going to Canada, they engaged in and became a world champion, everything became so good. There, you talk about some of the challenges you had, but right from the moment in Nigeria before you went to Canada, I want us to focus on what you consider the biggest challenges you had to encounter on your way to the top, and how you surmounted these challenges. What would you consider the biggest challenges on your way to where you are?
You know, funding has always been the big elephant in the room when you talk about impediments to growth. And for me, especially back in Nigeria, that was a very big issue. And of course, you had people like Jackson Bide, you had Victor Kode, who were more like mentors because they were older and they were already on the national team. But for a boy like me who came from the village, I was in a the first day I put on wrestling shoes, I wrestled for like 3 minutes and I took them off because they were too heavy. I was wrestling on my feet, I was wrestling on the grass. All of a sudden they tell you to put on shoes. I'm thinking, what are these things? I can wrestle better without wrestling shoes, you know? But it was more the coaching. You didn't really have the setup in Nigeria. You didn't have that support network you would have in other clients, you know, the doctors, the physiotherapists, the dietitians, you know, in places like Canada, the US, you have all those things. Early in the morning, you come, they will take your blood pressure, they will take blood, they will go analyze it, come back, tell you where you are, if you are overtraining, you know, things you need to do. You don't have that here. Here, it's your sweat and blood. Is how you struggle. It's how you try to get yourself on the map. So for me, initially, coming from the village into a system where if you took somebody down and even on their butt you scored, here if somebody is sitting on the mats, that's when wrestling starts. You know? So those were very difficult things for a kid from the village. Going to Port Harcourt. I didn't see a car till I was in my early teens. You know, when you're in the village, what do you need to come to the city for? You know, you had no business coming to the city. You were in your village, you were doing your thing. If you came to Yenagoa, something had to bring you. When I came to Yenagoa for the first time, it was through a local boat. I had to like bail water. I had to bail water to come, and it was one of my idols, Tiger Ogbunazo was wrestling. And we wanted to come and wrestle, and the only way I could come to Yenagoa was bail a boat to come and watch him and go back. You know, that is the background of how I started, and somebody might look at it and say, oh, it's not rosy, but that's all you knew. That was your life, that was your existence. And you loved it, you cherished it, until you came and you saw all these cars and people getting on motor vehicles, and you're like, wow, this is what we've been seeing in the books. You go back, one day you go back to the village and everybody knows you came to Yenagoa and you're like a big god. You know, people admire you for coming to Yenagoa. That is my background. And that is why today I am so appreciative for where I am.
Yeah, but let me cut in a bit. You have really given up at some point, given all of this. What kept you going in spite of all of these challenges?
I wanted to be a champion. I knew from what my coaches had told me that I was gifted, that I had what it takes to become a national champion, possibly an African champion. And so it didn't matter what happened. If I was injured, it didn't matter. If you talk to Jackson Bide, he would tell you that I was probably one of the more troublesome kids he ever had in wrestling. Because for me, whether I was injured or not, I wanted to go and wrestle. My coach would sometimes tell me, you need to take some time off. You need to get yourself to where you will be able to compete in another, or be able to train in another week. But I just felt I didn't have that time. I needed to be on the mats all the time. I needed to train so that I could get on and become an African champion. I become a Nigerian champion. That's what drove me. For me, I wanted to be like them. I wanted to be like Macaulay Appa. I wanted to be like Victor Kode. I wanted to be like Jackson Bide. And so it didn't matter what happened. It didn't matter when I was not good enough and I was losing at trials. I knew that one day it will be my turn, and with hard work, I would get there. And that was, I think, for me, the driving force.
Let's conclude this interview by preparing for you where you motivate
to young men and women, young boys and girls, my advice would be that there is really no hurry in life. You need to be patient in whatever vocation you are involved in. Be disciplined, be dedicated. If you have coaches, listen to them. Put in the work. And sometimes the work will not give you dividends in a day. Sometimes it will not be in weeks. Sometimes it will not be in months. It will be in years. And sometimes it will be in multiple years, but it will eventually come. And what I did find with me is that it took a lot of work, but gradually, with every passing day, every passing week, every passing month, and every passing year, the results got better, and at the end of the day, I got to the summit. And if it is destined for you, as much as you put in the time and the process, it will eventually come for you.
As much as you put in the time and the process, it will definitely come for you. This is where the curtain falls on this maiden edition of Spotlight. And the Spotlight today has been Honorable Dr. Champion Daniel Igali. My name is Oyinyebi Tiasia. So thank you for being a part of this edition. Before coming away again.
Success in one's chosen career is glamorous and attractive. No wonder they say success has many relatives, but failure is an orphan. Many people celebrate success, but few know the story behind the success. On Spotlight, we celebrate the story behind the success with profile personalities who have recorded success in their chosen career with emphasis on the work they had to put in to achieve success. People who faced challenges and conquered them. Giving up was never an option. They made it to the top by dint of hard work and determination. If they could make it, you too can. This is Spotlight. If you have an inspiring story to tell or you wish to sponsor Spotlight, you can call us on 0703 759 9666 or 0701 212 7777 or send us an email to spotlightprogram1@gmail.com and we'll be glad to talk to you. Spotlight, telling the story behind the success, inspiring a generation.